Welcome to part 3 of this multi-part series in which I developed this artwork. Today we're going to get the initial size of the tree that I want and how I produced a pastel drawing in order to use later in transferring it onto the paper. Okay, let's go back to the frame that I want to put this piece of artwork on, and let's do some measurements here. I want to measure the inside of the frame. So if I measure the inside of the frame, this comes out to 1 foot 7.5 inches, so that would be 19 and a half. So it's 19 and a half from this length. So on this length here, it's 12 plus 2 inches, 14, and it's like an eighth. So it's 14 and 0.125, which is an eighth. So we're going to be doing a little bit of math here, so you know how I determine how big I'm going to make the image. I want to take an 1/8 inch all around. I want an 1/8 inch gap all around when I put the piece in here. So this distance here is going to be 0.125 or an 1/8 inch. Same with this one, 0.125. So if I do a little math on here, that tells me I want to take a 1/4 inch off of that. So this is going to be 19.25, and I'm going to take a 1/4 off of that, and this is going to be 13.875. Now, yeah, you could do the math on that to see that a 1/4 inch from that is 0.875, but that's actually the size of the image. Okay. So let's take a look at the sketch that I did. And here's the sketch. So this is going to be, from here to here, is going to be 19.25. And from here to here, that's going to be 13.875. That'll be the end product here. So we have to figure out what is the distance that this occupies. How much does that occupy? Well, if I do the measurements that I drew on here, this is 12 inches. And if we look at the image, it's around 10, or let's just say, we can say 10, roughly 10, or say 9.5, but let's just make it 10. So that means that this distance here, if this is 12 measuring, that's 10, and we look at the math on that, that's about 0.8 of the overall width. So the overall width of this would be 0.8. So it's 19.25, and it's 0.8, or 10 over 12. Or we can actually, let's just do 10.5. So let's do the math on that. And so if I take 19.25, let's clear that, 19.25, and I multiply that times 9.5, and then divide it all by 12, that says 15.25, roughly 15.25 is going to be how wide this image is going to be. Now, height-wise, if I do the same, and I measure, it looks like I have like 8 inches here, and if I look at this, this is about 5 inches. So I do the math on that as well. So I take the 13.875 and I do, what was that again? That's 5 over 8. And you may have to do this back and forth to figure out how the heck I did that, but it's just general proportional math here. Oops, clear it again. So that's 13.875 times 5 divided by 8 equals 8.6. Like 8.6. And we could just make it easy, 8.5. So we had 15 point, and this from here to here ended up being 8.5. 8.5. Okay. So the height of this, when I do the, when I transfer this onto my paper, and I'm going to transfer it using a jelly plate. It's, like I said, this height here was the 8.5, and this width here was going to be the, what did we say again? The 15.25. Yeah, 15.25. Unfortunately, it was 15.25. Unfortunately, my jelly plate that I'm going to use to transfer the image, that is only 14 inches wide. So we have to reduce this to say, make this 15 inches or 13 inches. So I'm going to take a couple inches off of this and just make this 13 inches wide. And because I'm taking a couple inches off of that, I'll probably take a couple inches off of this height. And what I originally wanted was 8.5. Let's just make the height, say 7.5. So that'll be my image that I'm going to transfer onto here. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use Pastel for that. And from our measurement, we know that we want it to be about 7.5 inches high. So we want it to be like from here to there. And we also know we want it to be about 13 inches wide. So we want it to be like here to here. Now, this is not a precise way of approaching this, but it gives me a general area of where I want to put my image. I'm going to use Conte crayon to draw it out, and of course I have my reference material. I've already gone through my placement. I've gone through just getting familiar with the tree itself and how I want to style the tree. So I can really continue to be pretty free form with this. So I know that it's kind of up here, kind of the way I want to do it. There's the one bulk of foliage. There's the next bulk of foliage. Comes in sort of like this. Again, I'm doing this as a style, right? My previous video talks about doing it, making your imagery as though you're styling your imagery here. And so I'm just kind of laying out the foliage, how I want the foliage to be. We talked about going up. We talked about this stair stepping that goes on. And the trunk line being like in this area, and the trunk line being in this area. So let's get real creative here, especially with the branching and some of the dead wood. the gin, and where we want to put that pot. So you can see I'm getting further away from the original picture and using more of my imagination and aesthetics, my feeling of aesthetics. And where the trunk line wants to be, I think this has to be a little higher, so not in here, a little higher there, and this needs to be a little higher. So you see that I'm not erasing anything. I'm actually leaving these lines, and that is there's actually a name for that. It's called pimiento. It means the original drawn lines are not erased. So you can see how the artist was thinking through their process of drawing. And I'd really encourage you to do that. Not to erase very much, to really leave it to maybe the very end to do any of your erasing. That should be done, I mean your line erasing. That's not when it comes to value, of course, because you're gonna put in something dark, and then you're going to start subtracting from that. So, but when it comes to your initial drawing, it's okay to leave the line work that you created to create your imagery. So I hope this is showing up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out the pads within the pad. So these are the pads within the pad. It's a method that is used in bonsai styling, where you layer pads on top of each other, and it gives it that fullness. It also is a way of cleaning your tree with the branching on the interior that you don't need, which allows light to get to the inside of the tree, and that really helps promote the health of the tree. In producing a tree, you do a lot of cleaning and those type of things before you wire. These are all wired. These trees are wired into place. And then before a show, the wire will be taken off. But the wires left there can be left for a long time, especially a slow-growing tree. There's aluminum wire and copper wire. Okay, so let me finish this. Okay, I got the basic idea laid out in the how I want the foliage to be, and so I'm going to start basically put the foliage in first. I'm going to go from front to back, and I'm going to be using pastels. That's why I use these gloves, and I'll just start developing this. So I tend to want to start with the darkest area underneath the foliage. So I'm going to fill this all up with that dark foliage. One thing also is that I don't want to be particularly meticulous with it, because we're going to be doing a lot. We're just transferring the image onto the paper, the finished paper with the jelly print. So I don't need to, be that meticulous about it. It's really good when you're working on a piece to work on the whole thing all at once. In other words, work on the whole piece all together. That's a good way of getting everything homogeneous and distributed well within it. If you work in one area only, by the time you get to this area, you may be approaching it differently. And so it's always good to work the whole thing all at once. Sometimes with pastels, you only can work with the colors that they give you. So I have a variety of pastels and different colors and different values. And so you really need a lot of pastels in order to do the kind of work, because it doesn't mix. So this is my process for finding the right color. Okay, I think that's nice. Yeah, I think that'll do for the highlights. A sense of motion in here, and so that's what I'm doing here with the trunk line. Is as I started working it, I realized it really doesn't have that motion that I want. Remember, the kanji is going to be right here, so I want that feel of everything moving in this direction. So often when you're doing your drawing, you want to put warm and cool next to each other. So the green is cool, and so I want to put some warm red right next to it and inside of it. But I distribute it throughout the whole piece, see? And it really gets that green to start popping. So now I want to get somewhat of sense of a light source coming in this direction. A lot of this is probably going to go away once I transfer it, and who knows how well the transfer is going to be. So right now it's really, again, it's about familiarizing myself with the imagery and what I want. So I'll continue working with this and trying to get a little bit more of a light source coming in this direction. So in order to have the light source in here, I need to darken this side. So we'll work on that. Okay, so this is done. I think it's good enough to transfer this onto the paper using the Gelli print. And I think there's some nice things that's going on with this image, but when you transfer it, you don't know exactly what you're going to get. That's the great thing and the scary thing about printmaking. But what it does is it induces new feelings in regards to how you're going to approach the motif. So this is done, and I think we'll move on to the next stage. Hope you enjoyed that. Part 4 will be how I transfer that pastel to a Gelli print and from that onto the paper, as well as create a stencil for the kanji. I'd really appreciate a like and subscribing to my channel, as well as if you would like to support me, you can do that on Patreon. I often post on Instagram my artwork as well as bonsai work. But I'd like to leave you with the idea that art is a journey. It's important to enjoy the process.